September, the 22-year-old was arrested for attacking a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old girl in two separate incidents on the same day in Flatbush. And residents say it's been one time too many.
I am one who believes in and back the idea of changing the system.
So one of the things that strikes me every time I highlight a story that has to do obviously with New York State bail reform is that they will always find somebody out on the streets of New York City or in New York State, because the law is statewide, to give a defense of it while acknowledging that current scenario, which is only possible due to New York State bail reform, is not what they intended in the law that they're defending. Now, of course, the woman that I showed you at the beginning of this particular segment is not showing her face on camera, and obviously she should not do so because what she's saying is stupid, idiotic, ridiculous, and absurd. And by the way, we're going to get into why not arresting people for jumping the turnstiles is also a major problem in New York City. But the point that she's making about how little crimes should get same-day automatic release, but not big crimes like the case that we're talking about, really goes to show you the absolute ignorance that people have when they talk about bail reform or any of these left-wing criminal justice policies. Because guess what? The difference between a little crime and a big crime is down to the prosecutor. If you elect a prosecutor and they downcharge the criminal to a category that is not bail eligible, what do you think happens? That person who is accused of something extraordinarily serious is going to get that same day automatic release, because at the moment in time, there was either not enough evidence to support the larger charge, or the progressive prosecutor is deliberately charging low. And that's how you end up in a scenario where a man who is arrested for attempting to assault a 12-year-old in an elevator had been arrested for that very same thing 2 times the previous month, and he's still out on the streets in order to do so. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This absolutely crazy story out of New York. It's absolute madness. And of course, the dumbass bail reform policy that enables it. That stupid attitude, that little charge, oh, perfectly fine, automatic same-day automatic release, because that's good. We like that. We support that. But big charge, no, I'm against that, even though the very policy that I'm advocating for sets up the scenario that supposedly I'm against and did not intend to happen. We are, what, 5 years in to this stupid-ass bail reform law, and we still have takes like this from the streets in New York City. And even though it's not the majority take, the fact that the local news went to find this person, who again was too cowardly to show her face to say it, really shows you the lack of education on this specific policy. But before we get into any of that, I want to thank everybody for bailing me out over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Tonight, a Queens man is behind bars again after attempting to rape a young girl for the 3rd time. This time around, he's accused of following a 12-year-old in a Coney Island building and assaulting her on Saturday. News 12's Morgan Scott spoke with residents, questioning why he was even free to roam the streets to begin with.
Look, I understand that this has become normalized in the state of New York, that we hear stories about this in New York City time and time again, but this is not normal. This is not usual. This is not typical. This is not what should be happening. And again, it is the consequences of bail reform, and of course, that New York State judges, unlike all the judges in the 49 other states, don't have judgment on these specific cases when it comes to being able to remand people to custody. And as a consequence of that, you have a scenario where a guy can be talked about in the headline of a local news story going into an elevator trying to rape a 12-year-old girl after he was arrested for this very same thing just a month ago for 2 other girls aged 13 and age 15. And we're just portraying this like, you know, it's a standard operating thing in the city of New York, in the state of New York, because it is. Because this is what the progressives wanted. This is what the Mamdani types advocate for, this is what they support. And guess what? It's only going to get worse if this guy, which by the way is very likely, is elected the mayor of New York City. Remember, he's a defund the police guy. He wants to stop recruiting, he wants to cut police overtime, and start the Department of Community Services, which will send out a social worker to talk to this young man, to talk to this repeat offender, to talk to this child molester, because that's what we're dealing with right here, about how, oh my God, he's actually the victim of poverty. If only we arrested poverty, none of these girls would be hurt. I don't know if you know that. The only reason that you corner a girl in an elevator and assault her, it's not because of your sick gratification or anything of the sort. It's because you want to feed your own starving family. Again, this is what the Mondani types have done to my state.
The arrest of 22-year-old Justin Lee for attempting to rape a 12-year-old girl in Coney Island is taking the community by surprise.
So look, I have two quick points on that sentiment expressed by this person who's doing the story on the ground. And the first one is obvious. Is that like her real voice? Is that like how she actually talks? She's like, this story in the community is taking the community by surprise. This man who was arrested, like, why are you talking like that? I genuinely don't understand what that voice is and how it's considered fit for television. And I know you guys might be saying that I'm bullying, but in reality, we all know that these news people do their own news voice. And for me, that one is just a miss.
Is taking the community by surprise.
This is the thing that surprising the community does not elevate to the seriousness of the story. And secondly, and probably more importantly, the community being surprised is annoying me as well. You should not be surprised. You should not in any way, shape, or form be shocked by this. You should not be taken unawares, because guess what? These stories were warned about prior to the passage of bail reform. In fact, we do reforms to bail reform piecemeal each and every year, because even the progressives that actually have to govern, that have to take heat from the public, end up realizing that it's backfired so horribly. And again, we need to repeal this damn thing. We need to fix this problem, because guess what? Bail reform was addressing a problem that didn't exist. Supposedly, there was all this evil white racism in the system because people were being held, and we needed to fix that by same-day automatic releasing. And we were told time and time again that this wouldn't lead to the very scenarios that everybody understood and predicted that it would lead to. And guess what? It has. So it shouldn't be surprising.
It raises a lot of alarms because the people living here, like I said, pretty much know each other.
So here you have a lady saying, oh my God, like this is shocking because everybody in this community pretty much knows each other. We pretty much know the people that live around her. And I just want to point out that that's not true. Like in New York City, there are people that come in and out of all these different various areas, including this man who's actually from Queens, New York, although he committed the crime in Brooklyn. And this is due to the fact that it is incredibly easy to get around the city. So the idea that, oh, everybody knows each other, it's a community, we could do same day automatic release, no big deal. Guess what? It is a big deal. It is a problem. And you in Brooklyn, some of the most left-wing voters, even though this lady might not be one of those voters, are the problem. You're the ones who caused this to happen. You're the ones who thought bail reform was a good idea. And for the life of me, you still say that you stand by it. You still say that you support it, even though you're like, I didn't intend for the thing that always happens with bail reform to happen again in my community to the 12-year-olds that I see in the neighborhood. And maybe that's true. Maybe you didn't intend for this to happen, but when it's been happening, when we've had entire mayoral races, entire governor races, based on this issue, maybe you should start paying attention.
Police say Lee, who lives in Queens, followed the victim into an elevator, and when the 12-year-old attempted to exit, he pulled her arm and pinned her against the wall as he put his hands on her private areas over her pants.
Well, I'm really outraged.
Late September, the 22-year-old was arrested for attacking a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old girl in two separate incidents on the same day in Flatbush. and residents say it's been one time too many.
So this is the lady with the voice, and again, I still don't believe that's a real voice, but as you just heard right there, he was arrested for 2 specific instances last month, again in September. We're in October. By the way, we're in the beginning of October at the time that I'm recording this video, and he was released despite the fact that he already showed a pattern of behavior. And this also is not even getting into his previous criminal history that likely predates this. This should not be a thing that is happening, and yet we're allowing it. Again, what is the explanation for how poverty drove him to target young girls? What is the explanation for how he is the victim of society, or evil white racism is the cause of this? Somebody tell me how the intentions behind bail reform should apply to somebody who targets children, who targets little girls. Right as soon as we get to the back to school season, this guy is targeting these women. He obviously has deviant sexual intent for these women, and I say women, but again, I want you guys to understand, I mean girls, I mean children, under 18, under 15, under 13, a 12-year-old at the youngest, and yet New York State bail reform is like, well, I don't know, maybe this guy is the victim, maybe this large man that's cornering girls in the elevator, maybe society is really hurting him, maybe we should help him, maybe we need Mamdani's Department of Community Affairs to talk to him, to rap with him a little bit, to maybe get him into a midnight basketball program. Again, it's asinine, it's ridiculous, and yet it is allowed to go on. Now we're going to play the clip that pissed me off that I played for you in the opening, just so you can understand how brain broken some of these New Yorkers are.
I am one who believes in and back the idea of changing the system. Somebody jumps a turnstile is not the same thing as somebody who attempted to rape someone.
Lady, you're the problem. You are at issue here. You are the kind of person that votes for these Democrats to implement these policies that end up ruining New York State, that end up ruining your allegedly tight-knit community, and your stupidity is unparalleled in our society. Let's be clear about a few things. The turnstile example is the worst example humanly possible for you to bring up for bad use of police resources, because what we ultimately ended up discovering in the late 80s and early 90s under Transit Police Commissioner William Bratton, who ended up becoming the commissioner of the NYPD, is that if you target people jumping the turnstiles, what you ultimately end up finding is that a huge percentage of them actually commit a disproportionate amount of the crime in New York City. And this actually makes sense, because if you are willing to do the extreme thing, like rob somebody or assault somebody on the street, or in this particular case, be a degenerate sexual assaulter, chances are you're going to have no qualms about paying for the train. So under Bratton, they started targeting these individuals. They ended up running them for warrants, because after you commit a crime, you can be run for warrants. And what they found was that there were serious violent felons among them. There were weapons on them, and removing those people from the streets had downstream effects on the safety of the city, because these people were using the subways as arteries to get into the city, and guess what? They never were able to do so. It also created a more orderly subway system. It actually ended up looking like the subways were cleaned up because they were no longer covered in graffiti. But this lady is like, that crime that's absolutely crucial to the enforcement of New York City, it's not the same as raping a child, which is true. It's factual, technically true, but the thing is, it misses the point that certain crimes contribute to an environment of lawlessness. They're actually ways for predators like this suspect right here to get around undetected, and the lack of enforcement has allowed these people to percolate. And again, the idea that we were jailing people long term for jumping the turnstiles is a myth. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. We implemented consequences to deter that behavior and deter other people. By the way, we have a transit system that loses over $500 million to fare evasion each and every year, so it also costs us a ton of money. But yeah, we were deterring that behavior, but this woman thinks we needed bail reform in order to stop these people from being held pre-trial for like decades or something stupid like that. And that is the exact reason that this guy gets that same day automatic release, because when he was arrested in those previous instances, they probably charged him with a simple assault. Maybe his intention wasn't 100% clear. Maybe the Brooklyn DA was being lazy and didn't want to charge. Maybe there wasn't evidence at the time and they were going to upcharge later. but that's why he was out on the streets, because of your attitude. And you're defending it right now. You're saying, oh, bail reform's still a good idea, because remember all those people who were arrested for jumping the turnstiles that ended up in jail for months and months and months? They didn't exist before. The majority of people were released without bail on their own recognizance before. The thing is, you actually had bail as a mechanism for those people that presented themselves as a serious ongoing threat to society, for those people that the judges assessed as dangerous, and now you took that away and you're shocked at the obvious, predictable consequences that have been making headlines for 5 years in the city of New York, for 5 years across the state.
If somebody is arrested for doing something or attempting to do something so heinous, I don't think they should be let out too quickly.
If somebody's accused of that serious thing, I don't think they should be let out too quickly. How about we don't let them out at all until we go through trial? Because, you know, this guy's a serious ongoing threat to society. He already did it 2 times in his previous arrest. But again, this is all based on the myths that this woman swallowed whole. And again, she votes based on it. She considers herself an advocate. She's like, oh, I heard this story of this guy, of this tale, who was held on bail for a really long time. And it turns out he was an innocent Baba Angel Aladdin. Therefore, we got to scrap the whole system. Therefore, we got to take this extreme step that doesn't really exist in any state in the union. We got to limit judges' judgment, which again goes against the very word judges, but also doesn't exist in any other state in the union. And then I'm going to complain about the results and say, oh my God, but I'm still an advocate. I still want to reform the system, because I don't know if you guys know this. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. System bad. System need change. System racist. That's why they say systemic racism. And again, this person's vote counts just as much as mine. And by the way, I know a lot of people are going to say, you voted for this, or you deserve this. I'm sure that's in the comments multiple times. And that woman did vote for that policy. But take note of the fact of who the 3 victims are in this particular case. A 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 15-year-old can't vote. Obviously, they are not people who are the authors of their own peril. This is not a situation where this dumbass ended up voting for a dumbass law. And guess what? She was victimized by a criminal that she wanted out on the streets in the first place. This is a situation where you have an idiot like this voting in this way, virtue signaling about how she's against the harming of children, and yet she doubles down on the very legislation, on the very attack on the system bad guys that enabled this particular criminal. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. That's what I think about this particular case. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. And yes, leave me your comments on the voice of the local news person, because that is just as, if not more crucial to the elements of this story that I decided to cover. Now, as per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a predator being released due to bail reform and people still supporting the law. Till next time.